Greetings, welcome back to my channel. I thought I would give my subscribers an update about a situation that is now unfolding near the Bahamian island known as Abaco. Bahamian Facebook is now in an uproar. There's a lot of mixed reactions to a barge that was en route to Puerto Rico, which experienced a technical difficulty and ended up running aground on our valuable reef system here in the Bahamas. Okay, now, there's a lot of footage of small fishing vessels near the side of the ship, and we see people throwing down washing machines, boxes of tissue, boxes of Cheetos, boxes of Nutri-Grain bars, tires, and car parts, right? And there's mixed reactions in the Bahamas. Some people are saying it's heinous. Some people are saying that it is basically a disgrace to see these people resorting to boarding the ship. And some people feel like it is an equal exchange. There are those that are of the view that this running aground of a large vessel represents a very hazardous environmental crisis for the reef systems. Local divers have said that due to the activity of these barges running aground, there's now a reef disease which has now begun to spread throughout the coral reefs in the area. I don't have the name of the particular disease, but local divers have noticed that after the last ship that ran aground about a year ago, there's been a decline in the coral reefs near the area that it actually took place. But I want to read to you an article which I call a hit piece. It's a bit of tabloid foolishness that is now being released in relation to this issue, right? And this article is courtesy of Jake Stofan on MSN website. But it reads, Pirates in the Caribbean, or at least an apparent act of piracy that stretched on for 2 days, seems to have been resolved. New photos obtained by Action News Jax show Bahamian police aboard a cargo barge that was taken over by roughly 50 people off the coast of the Bahamas on its way from Jacksonville to Puerto Rico. Action News obtained video showing several small vessels alongside the Brooklyn Bridge cargo barge about 3 miles off the coast of the Bahamas. The video, Action News is told, was shot by the suspected robbers and looters and sent to the vessel's owner, Trailer Bridge, as part of the ongoing incident. According to Adam Dietz, modern-day piracy looks very different than it did back in the day. As you pointed out, they're smaller, faster boats. The act of potential piracy in the Caribbean is an incredibly rare sight, according to Dietz. More photos obtained by Action News on Friday, taken aboard the barge, show emptied out cargo containers, once full of supplies and food. And according to Dietz again, a large commercial ship being commandeered by local pirates in the Caribbean is very unusual. Now, the company, which is called Trailer Bridge, told Action News that its vessel was boarded on Thursday after the tugboat pulling the barge experienced a tow wire failure that grounded the barge 2 days prior. It continues, the company contacted the U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, and local police, but Bahamian officials initially told the company they would not engage because they feared possible violence. It's unclear, based on photos and videos obtained by Action News Jax, whether the suspected robbers and looters were armed. Let me stop right there. And as you can hear from the tone, they are trying to portray this situation as being an act of piracy. And, if you Google piracy in the Bahamas, the only thing you're going to see is Pirates of the Caribbean. You're going to see photos of Johnny Depp in his Pirates of the Caribbean costume. You might see articles about Blackbeard, Iron Bonnie, Calico Jack, etc. But it's extremely rare to hear of any so-called piracy taking place in the Bahamas. Admittedly, when I saw this situation, I thought it was really regrettable that these persons took it upon themselves to enter this vessel and begin to relieve them of their cargo. But as I said, even a year ago, a barge actually ran aground on top of the coral reefs, and it has stayed there for over a year, at least actually a year. And so I think locals have had enough of this kind of thing because, the coral reef system is extremely fragile. It is prone to being destroyed by environmental toxins, pollution. The traveling of these vessels along this route obviously is going to be hazardous to the marine life and the ecology of the Bahamas. And so, what I would like to say, this characterization of this situation as being piracy is erroneous, false, and obviously the persons who did it are being mischievous. Stealing is not good. Entering a large ship like that, not knowing if you might find armed security, is extremely risky, and I don't think people should have engaged this situation. It reminds me of the containers of chicken that fell off near Jamaica. There was a lot of outcry about the persons jumping into those containers and taking away the cases of chicken that were being carried in the refrigerated containers. But in this case, the company known as Trailer Bridge, I think that's the name. The company actually owes the Bahamas government several $1 million for the restoration of the coral reefs. There's no reason that this ship should have been in the Bahamas for this extended period of time without them trying to actually use flotation devices and deploying barges to pull it away from this area. And I think them leaving it there is evidence of a reckless disregard for the ecology of the Bahamas. As you all know, the Bahamas is the spawning grounds of many marine life that ultimately swim out into the wider oceans and populate the oceans. And so for them to leave this barge there, basically on top of the coral reefs, was, I think, extremely risky and harmful to the Bahamas. What I would like to correct about the article, it didn't run aground off the coast of the Bahamas. All of that territory is considered to be within the boundaries of the Bahamas. Okay, off the coast of the Bahamas would be away from all of the keys, all of the major islands. You can consider that to be off the coast of the Bahamas, but in particular, if it's on top of the coral reef system near Abaco, that means it is almost centrally located. Okay, so I think the Bahamas government needs to move swiftly, deploy its legal agents to hold this company accountable for this egregious act, leaving a barge on top of the coral reef system to actually create more contamination and loss of coral reef presence. Okay, some persons actually have been arrested for the reported looting. I think about 2 individuals are now in police custody, and they are now being processed to the full extent of the law. It is not characteristic of Bahamians to loot ships, and I hope that this situation is not mischaracterized and Donald Trump doesn't now deploy drones to attack innocent fishermen who are patrolling our waters and looking for good fishing grounds. We also have Americans that are patrolling the waters in their yachts. We don't want them to send drones and start bombing the tourists who are innocently fishing in various locations. Okay, but family, let me know your thoughts about this situation. Have you seen this story? Do you believe that fair is fair? The stranded barge should have been looted because it is actually endangering the ecology of the Bahamas? Or do you believe that they should have just left it there to sink even further and be handled by the authorities in the coming weeks? I believe it was the fishermen who actually alerted the authorities as to what was happening. And I don't think the ship's owners would have acted as quickly if they didn't see some of their um, refrigerators and washing machines being thrown off the side of the ship. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below about all these dynamics. One love.